the Lord has done? Can you see what the Lord has done? What we waited for has come to pass. See what the Lord has done. On your wedding day, you're gonna sing that. Can you see what the Lord has done? When you walk into that property, can you see what the Lord has? When that healing happens, what we've been praying for, He has brought to pass. See what the Lord has done.
Good night, Tobago. Good night, Trinidad and Tobago. Good night, Tobagonians, wherever you are, in whatever part of the world you are. We are here tonight again on the Plain Talk program, our second session, where we hope to deal with measuring the performance of our THA. Last week, in our first session, we dealt with the issue of the Dutch disease, that economic phenomena that sees sectoral distortions when you have a country that is focused on natural resource rents and making profit out of the natural resources like Trinidad and Tobago has, like Venezuela has, like Nigeria has, and like the Dutch had way back in 1959 when this term, the Dutch disease, was coined. It's more affectionately called the natural resource curse. And that better explains the idea that you have this natural resource that can curse you to the point where it yields a corrupt society. And that's the natural progression that the natural progression that the Dutch disease takes us to. The economists have come up with this thing since 1959, and which means before we became independent, the economists knew of this disease, and we have not been able to we have not been able to grapple with it, and it has created havoc in Trinidad and Tobago. Up until last week, I tried to illuminate and tried to disabuse us of this idea that 6 nautical miles or 60 nautical miles of oil and gas, if we find it, it will make Tobago the richest island on the planet. It will not, because of this phenomenon called the Dutch disease. And by the very action of much of our leadership in the different divisions in the state enterprises and their actions lead us to believe that the natural resource curse will continue to be with us. So I wanted, producer, if you could bring up that clip where Mr. James is speaking about the oil and gas in our waters, even as last week, after, I would have tried to clarify this issue about the oil and gas not being a savior for Tobago.
We see the Minister of Energy selling off blocks in Tobago in the middle of an election season, and there's absolutely a need for an equal share arrangement to be had between Tobago and Trinidad. And
I was able to provide a package.
Yes, so that was Mr. James there. The normal rhetoric we have about natural resource being our savior. And I'm saying that Tobagonians there is a lot more that Tobago can do for its economic survival, for its economic independence. And maybe in the next 2 sessions, I will, give a list of the things that we can do in Tobago outside of natural gas that would allow us to be an economic force without waiting on the rents from oil or natural gas. So tonight, what we'll try to deal with is the whole issue of how we measure the performance of the THA. Elections are around the corner. And in terms of being able to assess where you would want to place your support, you want to be objective about this, and you want to be able to analyze based on the facts of the matter, based on objective information rather than subjective information. And tonight I have with me Mr. Rodney Pigott and Miss Karen Alexander Bath, both of CivilNet, who will speak about the survey that they are currently doing. And I would like to delve a lot into the previous survey and the results, which are very startling, not only for the administration, but also startling for the minority. And I will explain in a while what I mean by that, because the results of the last survey suggested to us that the performance of the minority was average, as well as the performance of the administration. And I'm going to ask them the question, if we have an average performance by the minority and we have an average performance by the administration, where does that leave Tobago in terms of our ability to govern ourselves? So I would probably want to take this opportunity to introduce Mr. Pigott, and he will say, he will give us some idea about the current survey, what they are seeking to do, and I guess Ms. Bath will add wherever he misses out. And then what I would do is I would delve into the previous survey, look at some of the results, ask a few questions, and then I would ask them to, address those concerns, those results that were presented in the survey, in the last survey. So, Mr. Pigott, you want to introduce yourself and explain to us about CivilNet.
Very good, Barry. And thank you so much for inviting us to this show. When you called and just told me the name of the show, it excited me. Because I like to support these shows and these efforts, because they come from the ground up. It's the people. It's the people making an effort to weave connections between themselves, which is what people in a society must do. It's the social infrastructure that we must pay attention to, not just the political infrastructure and the physical infrastructure like roads and things of that nature. But the social infrastructure is even more important, because without the people, then whether the roads are good or bad makes no difference. And there'll be no politics without the people. So weaving connections between people coming together and talking, discussing things. They may disagree, they find points of agreements, or they agree to disagree. And I think that's important. So these types of shows I like to support. And so I'm excited to be here. In reference to the survey that you referenced, this survey came about as a brainchild of Tobago CivilNet, who took it to the elders. We have a Tobago Council of Elders, which is still an ad hoc group, but it was chaired by Mr. Reginald Dumas, who's now gone on to the lands of the ancestors, peace be upon him. Dr. Eastland Mackenzie, who's still part of the council, Mervyn O'Neill, And we also have Jeffrey Lewis, that's part of the council also. And so we went to the elders and we said, look, we'd like to begin this feedback tool. It was going to be designed as a feedback tool, not to demonize anyone or try to, go against anyone, but to provide a tool for the people to speak to the administration, to let them know on a year-by-year basis what they thought of the performance, the direction that you're going in. That was the idea. And the elders, they embraced it. They said, wow, this is fantastic. This has never been done before. There's no precedent for it. And we need it. Tobago needs it because there's really no real oversight, so to speak. We have a minority council. But the oversight that should be there should be the people, should be people that are not elected, people that are not counting on being elected, that are not part of a party system, that they have to toe a line, just people. And so they embraced it and we put it into effect. The first survey did fairly well. I think we had about 300 and something odd people that responded. But that survey was 100% about the THA. Of course, a minority we included in there. A short demographic in the beginning. Second survey, we tweaked the questions somehow, but it still remained a 100% THA focused minus the short demographics. This survey, we listened to the people because from those surveys, we heard people saying some of these questions are just too broad, especially questions focusing on the divisions and so forth. They're just, how can I answer this? You're asking me to say how the division did. It's hard to answer that sort of question. So we listened to the people and we brought in a firm, an analytics firm, Knights Analytics, to help us to redesign the question, put them in such a way that they were more simple and it spoke to the governance of Tobago and the well-being of the people in Tobago who are actually part of the governance system. And Dr. Mack has been telling us this, for a while. That has been her input. The questions do need to be simplified. So this year, we focused on doing just that, simplified the questions. We broadened the demographics to capture more data about who was responding, go as far as the income people were earning, their education level and so forth. And so that lengthened. We shortened the questions about the THA. That became now a category, a section within the entire survey. The survey now had 3 main sections. The first section being the quality of life. So how is your quality of life in Tobago? Never mind THA or anything. How are you doing in Tobago? Mr. Tobagonian, Mrs. Tobagonian, right? And then we talked about the participatory governance. How is your interaction with the THA? Are you hearing them? Do you think they're hearing you? And so forth and so forth. And then we have another section. What about your contribution to Tobago? Right? Because it's not always about what Tobago can do for you, but what you can do for Tobago. So how are you, Mr. Tobagonian, Mrs. Tobagonian, how are you treating with helping Tobago to improve? Right? And so those 3 categories now make up the actual survey. Of course, we lengthened the demographics that were actually taken. So whereas in the first 2 surveys, if we had 21 questions and we had, let's say, the first 3 questions were the demographics, you understand? Then about 18 questions were about the THA. Now we have 21 questions, 6 of them are the demographics, about 5 of them is on the THA, and then the quality of life and your contribution. So this is now going to give us a broader perspective on how Tobagonians are actually faring in Tobago. How are we actually doing in Tobago? How is Tobago performing as opposed to how is the Tobago House of Assembly performing? The Tobago House of Assembly is one aspect of Tobago. That's what we're driving at. And that's what we want the people to see. That the political arm is one area of Tobago. It is not Tobago in and of itself. And so we're trying to get the people away from seeing the Tobago House of Assembly as the be it all, end it all. You can do some things for yourself. You understand what I'm saying?
Understood.
So that's where we are with this particular survey this year. And I must say, Karen, you can help with this, that when we approach people, we did a lot of door-to-door, one-on-one, paper surveys, as opposed to the online. So we have the online, and then we went up east, we went down west, all over the place, speaking to people. And when we speak to people about the survey, we're hearing from them. They love the questions. The questions are making them think. And it's making them think in such a way that they've never thought before, you see. And so that's where we are with this survey. You agree, Karen?
Yes, I agree. Good night, everyone. It's good to be here, Barry. And it's really exciting to be talking about the performance of not just the THA, but the performance of Tobago generally. And you mentioned something before we started about the average performance of both the THA and the minority leader. And you ask, where does that leave us in this democracy? And I found that was very interesting, because certainly if we are having average performances by both the THA and the minority leader, that does not make for being the best little island on the planet, as we are planning to become. And therefore, a lot has to go into a different way of doing things so that we can have excellent performances, both with the THA and with the minority leader as well. Because if we are not able to achieve excellent performance and performance that is very satisfactory, then what is going to happen is that the island remains in a fix, it remains stuck. It remains, below average, because if they are having an average performance, then the island itself might have a below average performance and not an excellent performance. And what we are aiming for is an excellent performance, because Tobago is very well poised to have an excellent performance in the global scheme of things. We are a very small island. We have about 60,000 people on the island. And therefore, and it's so beautiful. We are full of resources here, We have a lot of unused land. We have oil and we have gas and so on. And we also have timber, we have top grade cocoa and all of that. So we have the resources that would help us to become the best little island in the planet. It's just that we will have now to perform in a way that converts what we have, all the raw materials, all the natural resources, all the beautiful assets that God has given us, into becoming the best little island on the planet.
All right. Well, thank you so much for illuminating us on the current, the trust of the current survey, and also, the some conclusions on the average performances that we have across the board vis-a-vis administration, vis-a-vis the minority council. And I want to take this opportunity now to go into a bit more depth in the last survey results, because it gives some very interesting indications, and I just wanted to get some, some feedback from you as the persons responsible for driving, leading, initiating such a survey. So I'd quickly go to the yes summary page, yeah, and for the purposes of the readers, you had results for 6 categories for the overall performance of the THA. Transparency, very poor. Accountability, very poor. Communication, a tie between average and very poor. Leadership, very poor. Adhering to mandate, very poor. Overall performance, very poor. The question is, okay, what's your reaction when you saw these results of your last survey? What's your reaction? And then
Well,
to Ms. Bart, I would ask, how your sense of whether or not you would see any changes. Do you anticipate any changes in this survey based on what you have been seeing or hearing, as the case may be, between this survey and the last, based on public announcements and so on? Yeah. So, Mr. Pigott, you first.
right. Well, it's we must first understand that the survey is an opinion survey.
Correct.
It's not a scientific survey.
Correct.
And it's based on how people feel. What we found is that the respondents to the survey, from just reading the responses and seeing in one survey that a person would say that the minority was performing below average, and at the same time, the THA was performing below average. What that tells me is that that respondent was not driven by party, at least not by any of those two main parties. So we wouldn't say of that respondent that they were influenced or they are a P&M respondent trying to give the THA a bad mark in the survey. You couldn't say it was a TPP or PDP respondent trying to give the minority a bad survey, because that respondent and many respondents like that would give both the minority and the THA executives, the various divisions and so forth, the same type of mark. So this is telling me that this is more of an independent-minded respondent, someone who may have voted, they're perhaps part of the electorate, but they're not red, they're not blue, they're not green, they're not anyone's color. They're like me. All right? I voted in the last election, but I'm in no one's party. I don't do party politics. And there are many people there's many Tobagonians out there that don't do parties. They vote for who they think will serve them best. Right? They tend not to have a voice, because if you pay attention to the media, you will find that most of the comments on the political front is driven by the parties. For instance, when we first conceived of this survey, in that same year, and I imagine that this was also a first, where you had the assemblymen coming into a studio of a media house and giving their report on themselves. We just had the chief secretary rate themselves a 7, right? And someone just asked Senator Hislop the other day, how do you rate them? So the politicians are rating themselves and rating each other, right? That's not something that has been taking place all along. It's something that was stimulated by this survey being done. Now, it's quite okay for them to rate themselves. That's quite okay, right? But what we want the people to understand is that we are the employers of the politicians that go into the THA. So the people that we elect, we actually give them work, so to speak. So we are their employers, right? Now, I worked in corporations where, I was allowed to do my own annual survey, my own annual evaluation, performance evaluation. And then my supervisor would take that and go, okay, I agree with this. Actually, this one I would have given you a little higher mark. But no, Rodney, no. This one right here, not quite that high, and so forth. So I would evaluate myself, and then my supervisor would take that evaluation and reevaluate it. At the end of it, we'll come up with my annual performance. So it's quite okay for them to rate themselves. We want the people to know that as the employers, you have a right to rate the officials that you elect to go into those offices and mind your business, because you are their employees. And when everyone was on the campaign trail during the THA 2021, they all echoed the same thing. You are our employers. We even had the ACP that was before the one that just left, he would come on TV and state adamantly that he has told his men, he has told his staff, the police staff, that you work for the people. The people are your boss. You report to the people. So everyone had this idea and has this understanding that the people are the ones that are in charge. This survey simply allows the people to exercise that. Now, in the previous survey in 2023, as I stated, 2022, 2023, those were the first two surveys done. That has never been done before. I imagine that many of those people who should have responded did not respond because perhaps they may have been afraid to respond, even though we guarantee that it is 100% anonymous. There are still people, because the THA employs some 70% of the population. There are still some people who believe that somehow or another, someone's going to find out I did this survey. And so we have that set of people who won't respond because of that. And then we have the other set of people who may be supporters of the current executives who somehow have the misinformed idea that the survey was concocted as a tool against the executives, you see. And because they have that misinformed idea, they won't participate. But that's like shooting yourself in the foot. Because if you participate, we know you're going to give them a high mark, right? Because when the chief said, I give myself a 7, some said, I'll give you a 10. Okay. So if you take the survey, we know you're going to give them a high mark. So we're encouraging people, no matter what side of the coin you're on, if you are a THA employee, you have nothing to fear. This survey is 100% anonymous. CivilNet has no clue as to who's taking these surveys, who's submitting the surveys online, or any of those things. And if you are, in fact, a supporter of the executives, nothing wrong with that. They have their supporters where no matter what they may do, those supporters will find a way to make that okay. It's okay that you did that, right? That's all right. Take the survey and give them the mark that you think they deserve. Okay. You see? And so that would tend to balance any perception that the respondents to the survey are the, quote, enemies of the executives. Okay. You see? We will definitely put that to bed. Right. But let me answer the question also that Karen answered as far as the average is concerned. I agree with Karen, 100%. But we also have to keep in mind that an average mark is not a failing mark. It means you're doing your job. You're doing exactly what you said you're going to do in there, right? No more, no less. You don't rise to an excellent on no evaluation. I talked about the corporate evaluations that I had to submit myself to. You don't rise to an excellent unless you go over and above what you were supposed to do, right? So if your boss tells you, look, your job is to make sure, you know, this place is clean when we leave, and you do that, you've done your job. Now, if you go a step further and you clean the ceiling and the walls and he comes in and everything is shiny, my God, I didn't tell you to do that, but thank you. You're an excellent, you see? So excellent means you've gone over and above. Okay. And average simply means you've done at least what you're supposed to do for that particular year. So that's what the average is.
Okay. All right. Well, before Ms. Bat responds to what she thinks might be the current reaction to these results, I want you to play the clip, the second clip, producer.
And representing the people of Tobago and standing in Scarborough and saying that it's not about the allocation, it's about mismanagement. If we are entitled to $5, give us our $5. Let me tell you something. A people right to self-determination have gone to the extreme, if you go to the international literature, that the people have a right to mismanage themselves. You know? So not because Port of Prince feel we can't manage them mean that they will take our money, you know. The Port of Prince have an authority to manage we will determine our destiny. And that gives you within that margin of determination, even the right to mismanage yourself. So it is not Port of Spain to sit in Port of Spain and adjudicate that Scarborough can't manage itself, so we'll keep back some of the money down here and come and spend it for them. Like they want to spend $56 million to renovate the Magdalena Hotel, and they give us $205 million. That is over 30% of our whole development budget. How do you?
So, Mrs. Alexander, before you respond, just by way of, I'm sure you recognize, this is the Chief Technical Advisor to the Chief Secretary. And the comment I want you to focus on is this right. I think you know about rights to some extent, about this right to, people have a right to mismanage themselves. No, I found it very, I don't want to describe it here, although it's plain talk, but, I find, very...
Can I help you, Barry?
Yes, go ahead.
You find it disturbing.
Yes, it's very disturbing. So
Yes.
Thank you so much for the assistance. So, I mean, in the context of such a statement, what you're thinking based on all that has been happening in the public space, what you think you might be seeing in terms of changes for the better in terms of the results. So what's your expectation?
Even though I understand what he means by the right to mismanage ourselves, meaning that people have the right to determine their destiny. As a country, he's saying that Tobago has the right to determine where we go and how we get there. Mismanagement, however, ought not to be part of the equation. Okay. And we should not be even mentioning it as part of the equation in the context of the right to mismanage ourselves. Because when we become independent and autonomous and we are in charge of our own destiny, one would hope that what we would be doing is not, certainly not, mismanaging ourselves, but managing ourselves in a way that makes it sustainable for us to be autonomous, that makes it easy for us to move forward and also to progress along the scale of evolution. So I am hoping and trusting that our idea of our rights and so would not include the right to mismanage ourselves, but the right to manage ourselves properly, the right to apply proper methodology to everything that we do. And every time I think about methodology and technique and process, I think about my own mother, who was a very simple woman. She had no big set of education, but she would always say to me, Karen, there's a technique for doing everything. And what I have observed in our space in Trinidad and Tobago is that we function without technique, without methodology, without due process. We just do what we want, when we want, how we want. And while we talk about things, like there is a lot of talk now about resilience and becoming resilient and having resilient society and having resilient communities and so on. Nobody is talking about the methodology for getting there.
Right.
How do we become a resilient society? How do our communities become resilient? What are the characteristics of resilience that must be put in place for our communities to act in a resilient manner?
But how do we become the greatest island on the planet?
How do we become the greatest little island on the planet? What is the methodology that we are going to use to get there? And can we trust that once we have established the methodology that we are going to follow it? Because that is the other thing, I'm a consultant, social development planning consultant, and very often I am hired to do projects. And once I'm hired to do those projects, it is very thoroughly researched and everything. And then we have a lot of recommendations that we make. Sometimes we have a whole action plan that we may flesh out and present. And at the end of the day, Nothing happens. So this is part of the problem in Trinidad and Tobago. We have the answers and the solutions to all the problems that we have. Believe it or not, we have those answers, we have those solutions. We are not implementing, and we are not evaluating, we are not monitoring, we are not using process and technique and methodology. We are just going vai and doing it how we want to, how we feel to do it, whatever, if we, on the basis of whether we like this one or we don't like that one or whatever it is, but we are not following process. We are not using techniques and methodologies and processes, So we are in a bit of a problem, and this is one of the reasons why we ended up with, in the first 2 surveys, I think, the results were not very satisfactory, but we must also bear in mind that whenever you have the opinion surveys, you have to also consider the extent to which people are capable of giving an unbiased opinion and a balanced opinion about what is taking place. Because many times, especially if the administration does not have a proper communication system, many times people don't know what is going on. And therefore, when you don't know, you share an opinion that is based on ignorance, or you share an opinion that is based on emotion or something, and not really based on evidence and fact. So, what we are seeking to do in CivilNet is to encourage the society, encourage the citizens to become more accurate with what is happening at government level, to become more involved in the governance process. And hence that part of the questionnaire that speaks about participatory governance, and ask them about the extent to which they are able to participate in the decision-making processes, whether they have been attending meetings, whether they have been completing surveys, whether they have been giving feedback to the government, and so on. So we need, on the side of the government, to ensure that the information gets out there and people become more aware and knowledgeable about what is taking place. And on the part of the people need to make themselves aware and to find out what is going on at the level of government. And also not just to find out what is going on, but when we find out, we need to let the government know how we feel about things. We need a lot more vigilance in the society than we have, and we need a lot more activism than we have. People are just, for example, I'm coming up to the studio just now, and the lights on the cars are not conducive to safety at night with driving, because they have some new lights on cars now, a kind of white light that prevents you from seeing anything when that light is coming at you. It's not like the old one. And I'm saying, but don't the authorities drive at night to see the effect of these lights on people and how dangerous it is driving at night in Tobago? And the authorities seeing that we don't have sufficient lighting apart from the car lights. Those yellow lights are not giving any light. And there are many times on the road you reach areas where it's, there's a total blackout and you can't see. And I tell people I drive by remote control when I'm driving at night, So we as a people, we need to be informed about what is taking place. And we need to always let the government know how we feel about what is taking place. This is why I'm so excited about this survey, because the survey is a very innovative inclusion in our governance process. We haven't in the past, no one was even thinking about monitoring the performance of the government. And better yet, now we are monitoring the performance of the island as a whole, both people and government. So I want to encourage people to participate in the survey. And you participate by going to our CivilNet, Tobago CivilNet Facebook page, and the questionnaires are there. And if for example, you are not computer literate or whatever, and you don't have a Facebook page, then you can always call our chairman at 323-1958, and he is going to be glad to go through the survey on the telephone with you and complete the survey on your behalf. And it is totally anonymous. No names given, no addresses given, or anything like that. And so we can get it done in that way.
Okay.
Barry,
Sorry, go ahead.
if I can interject, I really love where Karen went with that there. I hear a lot of talk about the greatest little island on the planet, which is not a bad goal to reach for. Barry, I learned a long time ago from an elder that if you are striving for something, you're striving to, let's say you want to live in a mansion, right? That's your goal. I want to live in a mansion with a big swimming pool and maids and butlers and things of that nature. You know what that elder told me? That elder told me that you have to literally become that person that lives in that mansion before you get that mansion. You understand? So you don't wait until you get a hold of your dream to become the person that is worthy of that dream. You have to be worthy of that dream before you get there. You see, you want a Lamborghini, but you know you're pushing a teeter wrong and you're bouncing it up. You're not taking care of it. You're not cleaning it. You know, you're not changing the oil and things of that nature. It's just and then you want a Lamborghini. You get a hold of a Lamborghini with that mindset of not being able to take care of your teeter. When you get a hold of that Lamborghini, you're going to treat it like you treat the teeter. You understand? So if we are to become the greatest little island on the planet, hear me, Tobagonians, please hear me. We have to become the people that live in the greatest little island on the planet before we get the greatest little island on the planet into manifestation. So what are we saying, Karen? We go back to people. It is the social infrastructure that needs healing. And that is what we want of our leaders. That's why we put them in office. That is why we hire them. Not just to fix potholes. You understand? We hire them so that they could aid in weaving the people together, uniting the people, getting the people to come together, helping us to build out the infrastructure. We don't expect the politicians to do that. We have NGOs and the people in the society to do that.
Absolutely.
But they can help us do that, because some of these things need some funding to do these things, and that's where they may come in. But the social infrastructure is more important. How we get along as Tobagonians, how we treat each other. Barry, do I go into the grocery store and see you standing in line with Karen and everybody else, and I want to find a way to cut the line in front of you and go and give my money to the person who's about to cash their goods out and just skip everybody else, disrespect everybody else? Do I want to do that? Is that a person that lives in the greatest little island on the planet? Barry, we're at the gas station. You're next to go to the pump. And I just come into the gas station and see the pump open, see you trying to ease there, and I just swoop in front of you. Barry, is that the person that lives in the greatest little island on the planet? I ask you that question.
Absolutely. And I want to just stick a pin here too, Rodney. You know, we always think in our society that economic development leads. And we focus on economic development, not recognizing that it is social development that brings economic development, and not the other way around.
Correct.
For example, our work ethic is what brings productivity or scuttles productivity. And work ethic is not an economic construct. It is a social construct.
Right.
Our values will determine our business ethics. and values are a social construct. So we really need to pay a lot more attention to social development in our society. And I agree with Rodney 100%. Social development is what will bring all other kinds of development, because it is the level of consciousness that we exhibit in the society that would take us to the next level of excellence.
I must agree with you there, because it falls in line with the Human Development Index, which speaks to, weighing heavily on human capital development. A point I will build on as I proceed with this program. But the discussions took me right into one of the additional themes of comments that you had in your report, your last report, the need for oversight body and special committees. When you saw this, I mean, and I'll throw it out, alternatively, you can answer the question. When you saw this, what ran through your mind as an oversight body, as a special committee that would allow for the kind of governance construct that would allow us to hear what the respondents have to say and channel it and change the behavior of those who govern us based on what the respondents have to say? What kind of oversight body, special committees ran through your mind when you saw this as additional team of comments?
Well, there has been one in particular that has been championed by Dr. Vanis James, called the People's House. The focus of such an oversight, Barry, is that the persons in place don't have a political dog in the fight. They are not concerned about getting back into office. Something that my elder, Reginald Dumas, peace be upon him, told me some time ago, that the politician has a focus of getting back into office or staying in office. So the politician is out of office, that politician's focus is getting back into office. If the politician is in office, that politician's focus is staying in office. That's a politician. He contrasted that with a representative of the people, the people's representative. In other words, I am going into this office to represent you, the people. I don't care whether you're black, blue, red, what color you're flying. You understand? I am there to represent the people. And if the people do not want me to go back into office and represent them, the people will speak and I'll be happy. I'll just go on my merry way. I am not going to fight. I'm not going to claw. I'm not going to cheat. I am not going to try to shoot down the other guy trying to get into office in order to get into office. That's the people's representative. The politician, they will duke it out in the ring till they're bloody because their focus is getting into office, not so much representing the people. There's a difference. You understand? What the people need are representatives. I need you to go in there and represent my interest. See, the politician will represent their own interests. The politician will make backroom deals that fatten their pockets and sweeten the pockets of their friends and their relatives and so forth and so forth. That's what the politician will do. The representative of the people is going to focus on helping the people to rise up, as Karen said, helping the people to bring up their consciousness. Tobago has been starving for that. And that is what we actually thought we were getting with this crew that's in here now. I still think it's possible that they have it in them. They're still new, so to speak. They're not as seasoned as other politicians that have been there for years and years and years. So my hope, and this is me speaking as Rodney, not as CivilNet's chair, but as Rodney. My hope is that if they do get back in for a second term, that they look at the surveys not as a weapon against them, but as a tool for them. Because Barry, a good leader, a great leader, is able to hear the criticisms of his people, whether they're constructive criticisms or destructive criticisms. A great leader can hear the shouting of the people, shouting them down, and hear through the shouting and hear the message. This is what Karen was alluding to. Hear the message that the people are actually telling us. Do better.
We're quickly closing on time. So, Mrs. Bart Alexander, what
Well,
special...
What you said takes me straight to the political system. The political system is not working for us, Barry. And the quicker we understand that, the better it is for us. Tobago is seeking autonomy. It means that Tobago is valuing its sovereignty.
Correct.
And if we value our sovereignty, it is time that we look at our political system that is so adversarial and recognize that it is dysfunctional. We do not need to have an opposition in the country. What we need is an oversight committee that oversees the 41 representatives who would all be members of government. And coming and being a representative of our constituency and a minister is an impossible task. To be efficient at both jobs, you have to be a robot. It's only AI could really accomplish that. And this is why there's so much dissatisfaction in the society, because the political system is not working for us. The people who are ministers in this society should be persons selected on the basis of experience and expertise, not on the basis of political acumen. So we need to have technocrats running the ministries, and we need to have 41 parliamentary representatives running the country, and a Senate that provides oversight of both groups. And when we have something to that effect, we're going to see more satisfaction in the society. We're going to see better results on these performance surveys. We are going to see improvement in the way that we do things, and we are going to see more progress within the society. But until we determine to have that constitutional reform that is so necessary in terms of our political system and so on, we are spinning top in mud.
Okay.
And the same thing can be said for the THA. I know you know you're about to close, where you have secretary and assemblyman. Who's actually paying attention? When we went up east and we heard some of the complaints that they had in the Argyle area up there, who's actually paying attention to the area, to the district, right? Because that person is also a secretary of something. They also have the duties over here as a secretary, which may take up more of their time.
That's right.
That they have to devote to dealing, again, representative of the people.
All right. So while we wrap up here, just a quick, last week I dealt with the issue of a concert. I think you had transparency and the whole issue of a e-governance platform and information communications technology system that was proposed, that hasn't happened. I discussed the issue of the Secretary for Tourism, and what I gleaned was a refusal to indicate who the promoter for a show on which taxpayers are expending $9.3 million on. And then sometime last week as well, we had the issue of ID cut being taken to court by a citizen who requested information on the Freedom of Information Act, and they refused on the basis that they are a private company. Producer, I just wanted to pull up the company profile of ID cut for me, please. I wouldn't be able to go fully into that tonight, but I don't know if you could read the first paragraph. Basically, the Eco-Industrial Development Company of IDCOT was established by the Tobago House of Assembly in 2009 as a wholly owned private limited liability company. It's wholly owned by the THA. The question in terms of transparency, how could a company that is wholly owned by us as taxpayers pay lawyers to deny us information about the very company that we own? Comment on that for me before we close, and I'll probably try to deal with it in the next session.
Well, much like that gentleman that at one point tried to cut the line at Penny Sabers in front of me and several other people in line, and I pulled him up on it. He said to me, "I tried a thing." Karen?
It's very contradictory. And there are so many contradictory things in our society, and we've just seen a whole contradictory drama unfold in front of us with the arrest of the commissioner and all of that. And it is time that we grow up. It is time that we pull up our socks. As my father used to say when I misbehaved, he'd say, "Karen, pull up your socks." And it's time in our society we pull up our socks from the top to the bottom. We need to pull up our socks. And so when we pull up our socks, we're not going to have that kind of thing happening, because we're going to know that if it's the taxpayers' owned property, then the taxpayers have a right to know. And therefore, we can't have an organization telling us that, this is privately owned and we cannot give you the information and all of that. We must have a right to know.
And the gentleman tried a thing because he knew nobody would say anything.
Okay.
He looked at me. I was the culprit. I was the outlier.
Okay.
I wasn't supposed to speak up. I was supposed to be like everybody else, allow him to get away with the thing he was trying. You see, so what Karen is saying, it's time for us, it's time for Tobago, it's time for the nation to pull up its socks. It's time for the people to stop allowing themselves to be so divided and fighting against each other. You understand? Yes,
Absolutely.
Let's have a campaign season. Call it silly season if you want to. Call it propaganda season if you want to. But let it be a season, just like hunting season. You don't hunt iguana all year long. You don't hunt those other wild animals all year long. Otherwise, you'll hunt them out of extinction. You'll have a problem, right? And then you'll have the whole ecosystem out of balance when you take that one animal out of the loop, right? So let campaign season be just for that season. And then when campaign season is over, and I will end with this, let us sit political parties down and everybody focus on Tobago.
Managing it.
Okay. Well, with that, I think we have come to the end of the program tonight. I want to take the opportunity to thank Mr. Rodney Pigott and Mrs. Karen Alexander Barth for
Barth Alexander.
Barth Alexander, I'm sorry. Gracing us with their presence tonight and helping us to analyze the performance of the THA. I will hopefully continue next week, taking a deep dive at the GDP per capita figures, looking at the Human Capital Development Index and what it says and what we need to put in place in order to capture this information so that we can monitor and evaluate how we are developing against the rest of the world. Thank you, viewers. Thank you, listeners. I'm looking out for your viewership, your responses, and your support as we continue this program of Plain Talk. Thank you and good night.
See what the Lord has done. On your wedding day, you're gonna sing that. Can you see what the Lord has done?